Welcome to our YouTube channel. I am Rohita and my teammates are Shreya, Jyotishree, Amreen. We are doing this video under the guidance of M. Prasad Sir, Associate Professor, Department of CSC, SWEC, Bhimavaram.
Our topic is repetition statements. So now let us discuss about repetition statements. A repetition statement is a notion that allows to execute one or a group of statements at multiple times. Repetition statements are also called as looping statements. In repetition statements or looping statements, the same code is executed multiple times. The number of repetitions is controlled by the criterion specified in the loop execution or condition. Python supports two repetition statements, the for loop and the while loop. First, let us discuss about the for loop in Python. For is the most widely used looping construct. For means repeat statement execution until a condition is true. A for loop is used for iterating over a sequence, that is either a list, a tuple, a dictionary, a set, or a string. This is less likely the for keyword in other programming languages and works more like an iterator method as found in other object-oriented programming languages. With the for loop, we can execute a set of statements once for each time in a list, tuple, set, etc. The for in statement is used to iterate over a sequence of objects. For loop is called as determinator or definite loop. Now let us discuss the syntax for the for loop. It is for keyword followed by val or item in keyword and finally the sequence ended with semicolon. The statements inside the for loop are written based on indentation. Here val accesses each item of sequence on each iteration, or it is a variable that represents the current item in the sequence, and the loop continues until we reach the last item in the sequence. Sequence can also be said as the iterable object you want to iterate over. The flowchart for the for loop is as follows. First, we enter into the loop and verify the test condition. If the test condition is true, we enter the body of the for loop and the statements are executed, and finally the execution control goes back to the test condition. If the test condition is false, the loop terminates and we enter into the body of the program after the loop. This is a very simple example for the for loop. First, we write for x is an item in and swec is the sequence. We print x, which means that first the loop gets iterated for all the characters in the given sequence and each character is printed for each iteration. Now let us see an example of for loop with using range function. A range is a series of values between two numeric intervals. The example is as follows. For I is the item in range function of range 0 to 4 and we print the value of I. For each iteration of the for loop, 0, 1, 2 and 3 are printed, but we have given the upper limit of the range function as 4 and the number before it is the last element to be printed on the output. In this example, we'll try to print a table. Here we have taken the number as 5, which means we are going to print the 5 table. And we have taken the for loop of range 1 to 6. That means we are going to print the 5 table of steps 1 to 5. We have written the print statement, and for each iteration of the for loop, each step of the 5 table is printed. For the first iteration, 5 into 1, that is 5 is printed. For the second, 5 into I, which is 2, that is 10 is printed, and so on. It continues until 5, which means 5 star 5, that is 25 is printed.
In most of the programming languages like C, C++, Java, etc., the use of else statement has been restricted with the if conditional statements. But Python also allows us to use the else condition with for loops. So let us see how for loop with else works in Python. The else block just after for is executed only when the condition in the for loop becomes false. In Python, we can use the else statement in combination with a for loop. The else block will execute when the loop has exhausted all the items in the iterable. That is, it will not execute if the loop is terminated by a break statement. So let us see an example on for with else. Here we can see that a loop that iterates over the range from 1 to 4, where 4 is exclusive. Inside the loop, it prints each value of I. After the loop completes, the else block is executed and it prints no break. The else block in a loop is executed when the loop completes all its iterations without encountering a break statement. In this case, the loop iterates over the values 1, 2, and 3 and then completes without encountering a break statement. So, the else block is executed and no break is printed. Therefore, we can see here the output is 1, 2, 3, and no break. So here we have to remember one thing. The else block will only execute if the loop completes naturally without encountering a break statement. If a break statement is encountered, the else block will be skipped.
So here is another repetition statement in Python is while loop. Now let us see while loop in Python. Python while loop is used to run a block code until a certain condition is met. Here the condition is evaluated. If the condition is initially false, the code block inside the loop is skipped and the program continues with the next statement after the loop. If the condition is initially true, the code block inside the loop is executed. After the code block inside the loop is executed, the program goes back to the step 1 and checks the condition again. If the condition is still true, the loop continues to execute the code block again. This process repeats until the condition block false. When the condition finally becomes false, the loop is exited and the program continues with the next statement after the loop. Now let us see about the flowchart of the while loop. We enter into the loop by checking the test condition. If the test condition becomes true, the body of the loop is going to be executed. When the condition becomes false, loop get terminates and the statements behind the while loop is going to be executed. And the syntax of the while loop is while loop. We write a keyword while and behind that we have to write the test condition followed by a column and behind the while loop by following the indentation statements are going to be noted. I am going to explain some examples of while loop in Python. Let us see one example. Here, the first two lines initialized with two variables. I is set to 1 and n is set to 5. These variables are used in the following while loop. The while loop begins with the condition that is I is less than or equals to n. Inside the loop, the current value of I is printed using the print I statement. In the first iteration, I is 1, so I is printed. After printing the value of I, the next line I is equals to I plus 1. That is, increments the value of I by 1. So the first iteration I becomes 2. The loop then goes back to the beginning and checks the condition again. If I is still less than or equals to n, it continues to the next iteration. If the condition is false, that is I is greater than n, then loop terminates. This process continues until I reaches 6 at the which point the condition I is less than or equals to n becomes false and the loop ends. So the overall purpose of this code is to print the value from 1 to 5 inclusive. So by using a while loop, the output would be 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. These are printing in new lines. Here is another example on while loop. Let's go through the code step by step. The code initializes a variable total to 0. This variable will be used to store the sum of the numbers entered by the user. The code prompts the user to enter a number using the input function and stores the input in the variable called number. The int function is used to convert the input into an integer. The code enters a while loop with the condition number not is equals to 0. This means the while loop continues as long as the number entered by the user is not equals to 0. Inside the loop, the code adds the value of number to the total variable using the plus or is equals to operator. This is equivalent to total is equals to total plus number. It accumulates the sum of the numbers entered by the user. After calculating the sum, the code prompts the user to enter and the number using the input function and updates the value of number accordingly. The loop continues to execute as long as the new number is not equals to 0. If the user enters 0, the condition number is not equals to the 0 becomes false and the loop terminates. Once the loop is finished, the code prints the final sum stored in the total variable using print statement, like print function. In summary, this code allows the user to enter number repeatedly until they enter 0. It calculates the sum of all entered numbers and display the final sum. Here, let us take the numbers like 12, 4 and -5 and last number we entered is 0. So the while loop is terminated. Now the total is equals to 11, that is 12 plus 4 plus of -7. It's equals to 11. That's all.
Now let us discuss about while loop with else statement. In Python, a while loop can be combined with an else clause. The else clause is executed when the loop condition becomes false. The syntax for a while loop with an else clause is as follows. While the statement while encountered with indentation, and also we write some statements in the while loop. Later on we write else statement following indentation and some statements. If the while loop condition is true, then the statements present in the while loop are executed, or else the statements present in the else block are executed. Now let us take an example. Here we assigned 0 to the counter, and when we go to the while loop, when counter is less than 3, the statement inside loop will be printed on the output screen. So this loop gets terminated 3 times and we get inside loop 3 times, and at last counter is equals to counter plus 1 will be executed and we get inside else in the last time. The point to be noted is that the else clause is optional in a while loop and it will only be executed if the loop completes naturally. That is, the loop condition becomes false. If the loop is terminated by a break statement, the else clause will not be executed. Now let us take an example. 0 is assigned to a counter. Now when we go to the while loop, counter is less than 3. Here 0 is less than 3. The statement is true. So the statement gets entered into the if block. If 0 is not equals to 1. So else block will be executed inside loop. Next, again the counter will be incremented by 1. When we take counter is equals to 1, 1 less than 3 is true. And counter, if you go to the if block, 1 is equals to 1. The statement is true and the while loop will be broken and it will come to the else part. Inside else will be executed. Thank you for watching our video.